Welcome a new session of Being at Home with George. And today we're doing a special live session, and I'm excited about that. And the title of today's session is Being, or the idea of the courage to be. So we're talking about being and being courageous. And I think about the definition of courage is mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. And so I'm interested in talking about courage because it takes courage to be oneself. It takes the courage to be the courage to say yes to life. And of course, when I start off these sessions, I talk about this idea of being able to embrace, say yes to whatever comes up, the good, the bad, the ugly, to have the courage to just see things as they are, to have the courage to know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, the courage to be to thine own self be true. And so just honoring ourselves, honoring what we're experiencing. And so this idea of embracing whatever comes up and generating the hope, it takes courage to do that. And to do so is really helpful. And why is it helpful? Because we begin with courage. Every virtue we have begins with the idea of courage, the idea of taking personal responsibility and being willing to say yes to life, like I said, and to work through challenges, hardship, through fear, to feel the fear, to do it anyway. And and so it's really important that by having courage, I can start to take responsibility for myself. I can acknowledge that I make choices, and if I can create space between stimulus and response, I have the freedom and power to choose. And so, be courageous means to do things that are uncomfortable. And how do I do that? By just being courageous. And so, I know for myself, love is really important. So, if I want to be loved, I have to. If I want to experience love, I have to be loved. If I want to be forgiven, I have to forgive. If I want to be if I want to be trusted, I have to trust. People have to become trust. So this idea of being the message. And it's really interesting that nothing can be done without courage. And even me doing this is the first time I've done a live session of Being at Home with George during COVID. And I have no idea on some level what to expect. This is all new to me. But we're talking about courage, and the idea of being courageous allows me, just like all of us, to see life as an adventure and to journey forward in spite of the fact that we may face challenges, we may feel uncomfortable. But the idea is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that can only happen if I'm willing to say yes to whatever's happening and to have the courage to figure out what needs to be done next. And I remember studying Edgar Casey, and I believe it's in the Bible. He uses the Bible a lot. He says, do what you know to do, and the next thing will be given to you. And so I feel like life, especially with all the gadgets and with all the uncertainty, that we need this ability to do what's in front of us, to say yes to whatever's happening and to generate the hope and say, okay, I can get through this. And so I wanted to talk about this because I feel like it's really important, this idea of being courageous, this idea of courage, this idea of being able to venture, to go forward, not to have so much doubt that we get paralyzed. And so I know for me, and I think about it growing up. Growing up a Southern Baptist, and this idea of the greatest commandment, to love God with all your mind, heart, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself, or some variation on that theme. And of course, studying some of the great religions, everything seems to come in triplets, or the idea of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Buddhism, we talk about taking refuge in the Buddha, which is the fact that we all have this masterpiece or Buddha nature or Christ consciousness within us, the Sangha, the community of like-minded folks, and of course the Dhamma, the lawfulness or the teachings. similar to, the Bible. We talk about the Ten Commandments and other things that are important. Like, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So this idea of having the courage to see if these teachings are true, having the courage to say yes to life and to figure out how to live in life in a way where we're able to live fully and creatively, and to be able to embrace our challenges in a way where we can learn from them, where we can actually understand that, to the degree, from my own experience, to the degree that I have courage, has a lot to do with my faith. What I take refuge in, what I think is going to be helpful. And so I'm going back to actually what Albert Einstein said. He said one of the main things we have to decide is whether this is a friendly or unfriendly universe. And if it's a friendly universe, then we need to live in accord. We need to use all our resources to live in accord according to how things are, to align ourselves with how the universe works. And if we think it's an unfriendly universe, then we will use all our power and resources to deny or destroy that which threatens us. And so this idea of actually seeing the glass as half full is what he talks about in terms of being a friendly universe. Because when we see the glass as half full, now we're coming from a place of love, of the growth mode, versus if we see the glass as half empty, then we're coming from survival mode and we're seeing scarcity. And that's when we're fighting and struggling and feeling like we're always in danger, always under threat. And so the courage can come down to being courageous enough to say, yes, the glass is half full, and I'm going to focus on what I want, and I'm going to bring love to bear, like I talked about in the greatest commandment, to love everything. And and so to me, this idea of courage is really important. So no matter what happens, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter what I'm confronted with, there's courage. And so I don't want to say too much more about it. I just want to open it up for questions, and we can kind of go from there. So I want to welcome, especially the first time ever that I'm using this YouTube live. So please bear with me, and open for a few questions. Why is courage important? Courage is important because we have to get to a level of courage before we get to the point where we're able to be responsible and say that my life, what I do, has everything to do with me taking responsibility and deciding how I'm going to be, to make the decision that I'm not going to let people, places, and things determine who I am or what I do. And so courage is really important to get to that place where we can be responsible. And one of the things that prevents us from being courageous is when we do what I call the DMB, where we are in denial or blame. So courage is important because it's the beginning. It's what gets all the other virtues, like kindness and gentleness and even love, that we have to have start with courage. The courage to say yes, and the courage to say I am responsible and I made choices. And so that's why it's important. And for me, when I think about everything that I've done, overcoming substance abuse or any issues, whether they're medical issues or whatever, it's because I have the courage to say, to take responsibility for my life and to be self-reliant to the degree that I'm able to say, I can have an impact. It's my responsibility, and I can reach out to others, and I can learn about the things I need to learn about so that I can make more informed choices. Just this idea of being mindful, or just the self-regulation, to be willing to say, I'm going to focus on what I want versus what I don't want. And it takes courage to do that. It takes a willingness to be vulnerable and to do it anyway. So the question is, how do we begin to have courage if we're struggling with things we're afraid of? And so we can begin to have courage. It's interesting because one way that helps me is to reflect on others or times when I was courageous, or what are the role models of people who had courage to do things. So we begin, we have to open to the possibility that we can be courageous. And like I said, role models, or taking faith, taking refuge in the fact that, when we do what we know to do, the next step will be given to us. And so for me, we begin it by acting as if we have courage to feel the fear and do it anyway. And once again, I'm reminded what Emerson said. He said, "Do the thing, and you will have the power." And that's a trust in action, or courage in action. And like I said before, courage is a reflection of the amount of faith we have. And so we can act as if we have faith, and if we can feel the fear and do it anyway. And I'll give you an example. I can't tell you how many times the fear of speaking in public was so overwhelming that it would actually cause me to shake. And what I did was, because I was studying in graduate school, and I came across Viktor Frankl and this idea of paradoxical intention. And he talked about whatever you fear, just say yes to it. So instead of not trying to shake, I decided to have the courage to be a shaken fool, and the shaking stopped. And so that's how we can do it. But just acknowledging the fear and doing it anyway is a huge way to do it, to act as if. And if we look at people, if we read the literature, especially through mythology and just even stories, art, we can see where people had the courage to just step up and be counted, or the courage to move forward in spite of the danger. And of course, one of the biblical terms was this idea of David versus Goliath, and his ability to, this young boy going up against a giant. And he had the courage to do that, and he had a deep faith. And he also remembered that when he was tending sheep, that a lion was delivered unto him. He took his sling, I believe, and he slayed the lion, protect his flock. And so just reflecting on past experiences can help us say, okay, this is how I got through it. I can also get through this. So I think I don't think, I don't know if we have any more questions. I just want to double check, but I think it's okay for us to just end, because I don't want it to be too long, but I just wanted to remind people that in about a week, next Wednesday to be exact, we're going to start another 6-week study group, and the topic or the theme of that study group, 6-week study group, is going to be courageous. And the idea is, so I have this the Mindful Athlete online course that once people sign up for it, they can have access to the study groups, the one that we're doing, as well as the previous ones. And so if you're interested in exploring or talking or learning more about this idea of courage or being courageous, you can check out my website at georgemumford.com. So I really appreciate you being here, and just having the courage to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. So I want to wish you all peace and love and blessings, and may you be courageous, and may you be the person you've always dreamed about being. So long for now. See you next time.